Hello, my beautiful friends and loyal listeners. It's always a pleasure to spend my time with you on the airwaves. Thank you for listening and interacting with me on social media. That truly makes it all worthwhile. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram or Twitter at ZenSams with an X. We have a great show lined up for you today. Our guests are very impressive. We have My Digital World segment and talking all things crypto and the digital process with cryptocurrency and AI expert Gary Fowler and economist and visionary Shahal Khan. Then I'm going to pour a little laugh in your evening with comedian Jeffrey Gurian. He's a director, a book author, a radio personality, and a doctor. He's going to be performing at the Cutting Room August 17th. Quite impressive, I'd say. Now, before we move on to our next guest, who is producer of Entourage and Ballers, Rob Weiss, we're going to chat a little bit about Biden overstimulating the economy from this millennial mom's perspective. Here is something interesting. Now, as the U.S. economy continues its recovery from COVID-19, retail sales have jumped to 15% above pre-recession levels. But that consumption comes at a cost, steering inflation for gas, food, and building materials. And amid those rising fears and the reality of considerable labor shortage and wage inflation, one question persists. Could we have overstimulated the economy? Well, maybe we did. But in my opinion, that's probably a lot better than understimulating it and waiting years for a recovery. I do think that the Fed, the Congress, and the president will probably have to ease the throttle a little bit so the situation doesn't spiral out of control. I say this because in April of 2020, the number of unemployed people jumped to more than 23 million. Mainly COVID related, a huge increase from February of 2020 numbers when only 5.7 million were without work. And that was post-COVID, fair enough. Now, just 9.8 million are unemployed. For one, we shouldn't be hitting labor shortages just yet, and we are. So why? One would ask. Job openings are at an all-time high with more than 8.1 million positions basically opened as of March. Well, the catch is that the stimulus package includes federal unemployment of $300 per week on top of state level benefits. Now, this appears to be a disincentive for someone to work. And as retailers, restaurants, and hotels try to reopen and get businesses rolling again, many are scrambling to hire enough workers. And because the federal unemployment benefits are extended through September 6th, some businesses can't staff up this summer, okay? So in response, several states have already announced plans to cancel the federal unemployment benefits, and more will likely follow as local governments basically grapple with these labor shortages. And having plentiful job openings and a little wage inflation is generally good for most types of real estate. But unfortunately, the sectors most impacted by these issues, retail and hotels, are all those who have been most grounded by the pandemic. So what is the bottom line? Well, even with the staffing challenges, retail and hotels are ultimately better off with a fast recovery. The issue of staff shortages will likely resolve by the fall, in my opinion, when federal unemployment benefits expire. And I say we are off to a great 2020 at that point. Now we have Entourage and Ballers producer Rob Weiss, and he has teamed up with Shawn, Chase, and O'Neill McKnight and launched the Cray on PodcastOne this June. He's going to be coming up next. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City, Tempest, a Burkhan World Project, Vice Cucina in Midtown and Soho, Revere Securities, Helen Yarmack International, and Romulus Entertainment. Tune in every Saturday night at 9 p.m. on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, or download the iHeart app. Text the word collaborations to 917-575-2321. Follow Zen on social media at ZenSams. That's Zen with an X.
Welcome back, beautiful people. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, ZenSams. Now, up next, we have My Digital World segment, talking crypto, NFTs, if we get to them, and the digital process with cryptocurrency experts Shahal Khan and Gary Fowler. Now, what are cryptocurrency and blockchain? Well, let's simplify. Cryptocurrency is a digital asset. In simple terms, crypto is like a token that can be exchanged for real money and can be used to buy actual products. Now, more than 10,000 different cryptocurrencies are traded publicly, and they continue to proliferate, raising money through something called initial coin offering, or ICOs. Now, the total value of all cryptocurrencies as of July 16th of this year was more than 1.3 trillion, which was down from April high of 2.2 trillion. Now, in simple terms, crypto is a form of payment that can be exchanged online for goods and services. Now, many companies have issued their own currency, often called tokens, and these can be traded specifically for the good or service that the company provides. Think of them as you would arcade tokens or casino chips. You'll need to exchange real currency for the cryptocurrency to access the good or service. All right, stay with me. Now let's chat blockchain. It's a little bit more complicated. Blockchain is a specific type of database. It differs from a typical database in the way it stores information. Blockchain stores data in blocks that are then chained together. As new data comes in, it's entered into a fresh block. Once the block is filled with data, it is chained onto the previous block, which makes the data chained together in chronological order. You following? Now, there's different types of information that can be stored on a blockchain, but the most common use so far has been as a ledger for transactions. Are you following me? Decentralized blockchains are immutable. And what does that mean? It means that the data entered is irreversible. For Bitcoin, this means that transactions are permanently recorded and viewable to basically anyone. In Bitcoin's case, blockchain is used in a decentralized way that no single person or group has control. Rather, all the users collectively retain control. This is a key takeaway. Now, here to help me make sense of all of this is Shahal Khan and Gary Fowler. Gary is president, CEO, and co-founder of GSD Venture Studios. He's an award-winning serial entrepreneur and investor, and he was on the original management team of Click Software that was recently sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion. Gary was recently named one of the top 10 global AI executives and is an international speaker and author of over 140 articles. Pretty impressive. Now you have Shahal. His career as an investor and an entrepreneur and social venture capital spans over 22 years with investments encompassing telecoms, real estate, energy, natural resources, and of course, technology. He is the founder of Burkan World, and all projects of Burkan are designed to give back to society. Shahal was born in NYC and educated at American University and Johns Hopkins University in Washington, D.C., and his family background can be traced all the way back to the Mogul nobility in the South Asian region. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Great to be here. Thanks, Sen.
Absolutely. Gary, it's such an honor to have you. Shahal, always a pleasure. Gary, I'm going to just have you frame this for us now. What are the main reasons why cryptocurrency has become so popular, specifically in today's day and age?
Well, the little backdrop on it. Think about what's happened over the last 18 months. Our lives have fundamentally changed then with this digital transformation and COVID. We've had to look at things differently. We've had to do things differently. So when we look at cryptocurrencies, McKinsey said that 93% of the companies worldwide over the next 10 years would have to go through the digital transformation. But as individuals, we've had to do a lot more quickly. And at the same time, we've had to maintain commerce. So it's about speeding up opportunities and really leveling the playing field. So part of the reason is, the fees can be low, especially if you're not using some of the exchanges. Once you understand crypto, today the masses, if you ask people 5 years ago about Bitcoin, they would say, well, listen, nefarious people were using it, et cetera, Ethereum, or the other digital currencies. But today, you talk about mothers, you talk about, my daughter that's 26 years old. I mean, she talks about Bitcoin and Ethereum like it's just, a way of life. So it's changed. Cryptocurrencies aren't associated with governments for the most part, although some have established their cryptocurrencies. There's a potential for profit. Look at Bitcoin over the last year. Yes, it's fluctuated a bit, and Ethereum, but guess what? It's up. It's getting easier to use. Part of when you ever have a new technology, it's ease of use, Ed. Ease of use. Now we can get in, you can use a Coinbase account and very, very easily transfer money, not just Coinbase. Security, right, is important.
And Shahal, this question is going to be for you. Let's piggyback off security. We're in a world today where everybody is afraid of their information and their data being stolen. And of course, cryptocurrency is a gray area. A lot of people are not sure if this is safe or even legal. Shahal, what do you say to the average individual who is poo-pooing, so to speak, cryptocurrency? Because there's a lot of them out there.
Thank you, Zen. So I think a lot of this has to do with ownership of the data and people feeling secure that where their data is kept secure. First and foremost, they have to be really aware that the platforms they use have to be well-known and regulated platforms. And I've always felt that, people look at where they can profit first, and they tend to look offshore, and they tend to look at a lot of these exchanges that aren't regulated, and that's where a lot of the fraud happens. And if you are, looking to get into crypto, if you're going to invest in crypto, you've got to be aware that this is still an early stage of crypto. There's a lot of excitement around it. There are a lot of exchanges out there, and you have to be very careful where you're getting your digital wallets, where you're putting your money. What exchange are you using? We're sort of, fortunate here in the United States that the exchanges that are here still have to adhere to a lot of the laws in the U.S. And, they should really look at utilizing well-known and established players. As do their research, they can't just jump into it. This is where they, tend to have the biggest risks in terms of security.
And Shahal, the security cryptocurrencies are safe because they can't be duplicated, basically. And these virtual currencies can solve real world problems, aiming for a decentralized economy. Reliance on financial institutions will decrease, and thus trading can become fully digital with no inflation. That is your motto behind really pushing this theory of the power coming back to the people. Can you tell us in a nutshell, based on what I just said, in terms of having crypto empower us versus being controlled by the banks and the systems? What do you say to this?
Yeah. Well, the way I look at it, as an economist, really is that I'm not very much like a lot of the other sort of digital or alternative finance promoters that say that we should do away with our current system of Western capitalism and or the other systems worldwide. The Chinese systems, they're all going to go to zero. The way that I look at it is that there has to be a redistribution of income due to the fact that a normal person today, an average person that works in a corporation, I've done some analysis, literally 95% of their time is taken by the company that they work for. They're really compensated, if you look at their lifetime, for 5% of their actual time and what they've created. So that is a very old model that was created in the 16th century through corporations, through shareholding corporations, where the shareholders take most of the work of the people to the top. And this is what we see in our economic markets today. We see this in our capital markets today, and it's gone beyond just corporations. It's gone to the actual stock exchanges, and it's actually gone as well as to the government side, where you're having the government having a tremendous amount of debt, and that debt is also coming to the top in terms of its effect on the people, which shows up as inflation. So how do we get away from that? I've looked very simply at some of the models, economic models of income, and look at trends today in terms of how people are earning their income, and where people are actually spending a lot of their time where they're not earning an income. And that leads to social media, leads to gaming, where people are spending a lot of their time. They're being literally mined, for their time by corporations, and they're not able to monetize that for themselves. And so we've been working on a stealth mode on a concept called tempus, which in Latin means time, where hopefully we're going to allow people to monetize the time they spend on interactions in social media, as well as gamification platforms, and now be able to earn back from that. So it's a flip of the Silicon Valley model to a degree.
Power to the people. I love that. Tempest, keep that thought. Gary, with all the money printing during the pandemic, this means that now more capital is needed to be deployed, and people are looking for places to park their cash. And the appetite for large-scale investments has never been bigger. And a lot of that likely found its way into Bitcoin mining operations in places outside of China. What do you say when you look at the drama with how China is trying to literally kind of destroy before something has even kind of been deployed? They're trying to suppress this crypto. What do you say to that, and why do you think China is trying to do that in under 2 minutes? And then we have to cut to a commercial break.
Yeah. I mean, well, China's been doing that for some time, right? So look at communism. So it's not the first time. But, if you look at it, people that are resistant end up being thrown back into the Stone Ages. The world, this digital transformation, I said, intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities aren't. The idea is to create opportunities evenly around the world. So if China's suppressing or anybody else, they need to be aware. They need to look in the mirror, because the population at some point in time won't put up with it. We are moving forward. We need to do things a lot faster. We need to do things more securely, and we need to do things that are equitable. These digital currencies give us the opportunity to do that, and being able to base on, how much your data is worth to you personally, instead of a Google out there, you own your data. The world's going to shift. This 4.0 world's coming upon us, and the digital transformation here to make our lives better, more efficient, and much more effective.
Wow. You are just a plethora of knowledge. You are like the book I've always wanted with all the questions. Between the two of you, I'm in the right hands here. We're going to cut to a commercial break, and we will be right back with cryptocurrency experts Shahal Khan and Gary Fowler. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City, Tempest, a Burkhan World Project, BJ Cucina in Midtown and Soho, Revere Securities, Helen Yarmack International, and Romulus Entertainment. Tune in every Saturday night at 9 p.m. on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, or download the iHeart app. Text the word collaborations to 917-575-2321. Follow Zen on social media @ZenSams. That's Zen with an X.
Welcome back, beautiful people. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Now, in my digital world, we are talking to Shahal Khan and Gary Fowler, and we had just finished talking about the cryptocurrency bit and where China is headed with this new with these new headliners that they keep making. Now, well before China decided to kick out all of its Bitcoin miners, they were already leaving in drones. And new data from Cambridge University shows they were likely headed right here to the United States. The U.S. has fast become the new darling of the Bitcoin mining world. It's the second biggest mining destination on the planet, accounting for nearly 17% of all the world's Bitcoin miners as of this April 2021. That's 151% increase from September of last year. Shahal, this is an incredible piece of information. We love that this is on the rise here in the U.S. What do you have in mind for Tempest, specifically for our local markets, and what can you tell the world once you introduce Tempest?
Wow, Zen, I mean, I'm going to try to keep this as succinct as possible, but my theory on Bitcoin is that Bitcoin has always been a financial weapon that is pointed at our markets. We don't technically know who started it. We know that theoretically a lot of its technology is old Bell Labs technology. The first people that really plowed into it are China and Russia. And then, we had a certain amount of people that are notable in the United States that I think made big mistakes, like Elon Musk and Michael Saylor, just literally promoting it without knowing who owns it. It's not transparent. There's no way to regulate it. And once we start putting it on our balance sheets of our corporate public companies, if it's fooled around with, and people that own it, 60% of people that own it, we don't even know who they are. They could literally destroy and wipe out balance sheets of our companies on our public markets if they're holding it on their balance sheets as a store of value. So my view is that China did whatever it needed to do to get it going, and now they're throwing it over to us, and for us to use our energy to be able to mine it, and it's just going to help whoever the people that are holding on to the majority of it, which nobody knows who they are. But my theoretical and intelligence sources point right to the Chinese government and some of the other people there. Now, I try to be non-political as much as possible because I try to look at the world as much as I can as one, without borders. We're looking for a future where people are actually, working and interacting without borders. And the way to do that is really to go to the people all over the world that need income and find a transparent way for them to earn money and store that money transparently and safely. And this is what I've tried to do in terms of my theoretical creation of this Tempest, where it'll be completely transparent. We'll know who earned it. We'll know geographically where they earned it, and it'll be put on systems where the governments will have a view to it, so they can tax it. So it's also good for societies in terms of the governments earning income as well as people. And that's the way we're looking at a currency, global currency of the future. And I hope this model will lead a lot of other people to create similar currencies that will actually unify people rather than be a untransparent threat, possibly.
So Tempest is going to pave the way. We definitely need more transparency, and I think with someone like yourself heading something on this level, of course, you do your research, you have the best of the best around you, and you definitely know what you're talking about. And I think that people are looking to trust again, and I think that they've lost a lot of faith in our system. So this is definitely a new way of having people involved and compensated. So I can't wait to see what that unfolds. Now, this question is for Gary. Gary, cryptocurrencies in general, people will argue if they're a good investment or a bad investment, and it's a very broad question because we know cryptocurrencies may go up in value, but many investors see them as mere speculations, not real investments, and a lot of people are at war over this. What's your take?
Well, so on one side of it, we've got this incredible opportunity in the cryptocurrencies to be able to dramatically change our lives. And as I said, make them more efficient, effective, and more interesting. But at the same time, we don't want to get into the Dutch tulip phenomenon. I mean, some of these coins that are coming out that don't have the integrated approach, as Shahal has mentioned, are challenges. And what we don't want to do is get into that Dutch tulip phenomenon where we end up investing in something that's not really there. So to your listeners that are out there, be cautious. Make sure that you've got a sustainable, an interesting coin that's got that's backed and has credibility. Don't go out and do a whim du jour approach where you're going to go out and invest in something that may or may not be successful. If you do that, it's like throwing a dart against the board and closing your eyes. I wouldn't suggest it. So what we got to do is, that's exactly what you said, Zen, is what needs to come, an integrated approach. The Germans have a phrase, Gestalt, the sum of the parts equal the whole. Nobody's really mastered taking all these ancillary parts, loyalty, different aspects of our lives, our data, and really tokenizing to make our lives better. And it's got to happen because we're inundated. We are in a state of infobesity. We need to be able to use these kind of tools like a Tempest, like cryptocurrencies, like tokenizations to be able to make our lives easier.
It's funny that you said that, to make our lives easier. Here we are introducing cryptocurrency for the average person. This seems very complicated, and yet when you look at it on the flip side, from visionaries like yourself, like Shahal, you see this as a great opportunity, and you also see it as a way for people to be able to take control back into their hands. Now, Bitcoin and other cryptos have been anything but stable through much of their history. For example, while Bitcoin traded at close to 20,000 in December of back in 2017, its value then dropped to as low as 3,200 a year later. And by December 2020, it was trading at record levels again. So this price volatility creates a conundrum. And if Bitcoin is to be worth a lot more in the future, then people are less likely to spend and circulate them today, making them making them less viable as a currency, so to speak. Why spend a Bitcoin when it could be worth 3 times the value next year? Shahal, Gary, anyone?
Yeah, I mean, the situation is, from my perspective, so you got to look at it. It depends on what kind of resilience you have in and of yourself. Some people get nervous and, they don't look at it as a long-term investment strategy. This is not for the weak, this market. But again, these more integrated approaches are going to stabilize. From my perspective, it's going to be a more stable environment. And that's really what we got to strive for, because these ups and downs and ins and outs that we have today happen whenever there's a technology boom. And I've been involved in a number of them, e-commerce, etc. What happens is skeptics comes out, people don't really want to do it. Then all of a sudden, people, online credit card purchases in the late 90s, early 2000s, now everybody does it. It's normal. But what's going to happen is tokenization is going to take over, and our lives, as I said, will fundamentally change. It'll be a lot more secure.
Well, there you have it. I always love talking to Gary. He makes everything so simple. Shahal, you have found an incredible resource on your side. There's no one else that you should be launching Tempest with, because you guys are an incredible team. And I thank you for having you on A Moment of Xen. It was such a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, Xen. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. And next time we're going to be diving into another My Digital World segment with Shahal Khan and Gary Fowler. You are listening to A Moment of Xen right here on 710 WR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Xen Sams. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Xen is brought to you by Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City, Tempest, a Burkhan World Project, Vice Cucina in Midtown and Soho, Revere Securities, Helen Yarmack International, and Romulus Entertainment. Tune in every Saturday night at 9 p.m. on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, or download the iHeart app. Text the word collaborations to 917-575-2321. Follow Xen on social media at XenSams. That's Xen with an X.
Welcome back, beautiful people. You're listening to A Moment of Xen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I am your host, Xen Sams. Now, welcoming to the show, we have Jeffrey Gurian. Have you heard of him? Well, the media often refers to him as a Renaissance man because he's so involved in a ton of things. He's a comedy writer, he's a performer, a director, a book author, a producer, even a radio personality, and a doctor, but not always in that order. He's worked with so many big stars and comedy legends. He's performed stand-up comedy himself at most of the big clubs in New York City and LA, and has been featured several times on Comedy Central's hit Kroll Show with Nick Kroll, John Mulaney, Amy Poehler, Seth Rogen, Laura Dern, and Katy Perry. His Comedy Matters TV YouTube channel has over 500 A-list celebrity interviews, including Jimmy Fallon, Tracy Morgan, Chelsea Handler, Jim Carrey, Trevor Noah, Lisa Nampanelli. I could keep going on and on. His channel has well over 2.2 million views. Now, he's written 7 books. The first 5 were on comedy, and the last 2 are on happiness, and he calls them the Happiness series. Now, Jeff is also a doctor and a former cosmetic dentist and a former clinical professor at NYU in oral medicine and orofacial pain. He's also developed a cure for stuttering, which he used to cure himself of a severe stutter. What an accomplished person. I'm so proud to call him my friend. Welcome to the show, superstar.
What an introduction. Thank you so much, Xen. It's so great to be here with you. You're fabulous, absolutely fabulous. And I'm excited to be on with you.
Oh, I'm so honored that you are on. Okay, let's get to the comedy of it all. Now, you have 2 books that are out that are the newer books. The 6th book called Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind and Spiritual and Humorous Approach to Achieving Happiness. And you attained bestseller status on Amazon. Tell us about the books.
Yeah, I think it was because I had a dog sitting in lotus position. You know how hard that is to get a dog to sit in lotus position? I wrote this first book. You know, my first 5 books were about the comedy world. There were compilations and celebrity interviews and stuff. But I wanted to write something that could really help people, because in my own life, I've had to go through a lot of obstacles and overcome things. And I was always struck by the wounds that we carry from childhood. Every single one of us is carrying pains from childhood. And I call them heart wounds. Every time someone ever hurt your feelings or broke a promise to you or hurt you in some way, let you down, broke up with you in a relationship, those things stay with us and they get lodged in our heart chakra, you know. And there's this stupid thing they teach us when we're kids. They tell you sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never harm you, which is the furthest from the truth, because every one of us had bruises that healed up a long time ago, but every single one of us can remember something that someone said that hurt our feelings, especially if you were ever bullied as a child or anything that happened to you that was painful. We carry it with us in what we call cellular memory, which I find fascinating. It means that every single thing that's happened to you since you're born is still inside of you. And it's the reason why you could hear a song you like and it'll remind you of the boy or the girl you liked in the 3rd grade with no thought involved. It just takes you right back there. Or you smell a perfume and you're like, wow, my kindergarten teacher wore that perfume. And every single thing that you've ever experienced in your senses is still trapped inside of you, especially the traumatic events. We seem to remember them more than the happy events for some reason. And so during the course of our day, things trigger us and they bring up these old memories and we feel sad or we feel depressed. And so I wanted to write a book about releasing those heart wounds to achieve happiness. Now, in my own case, you mentioned stuttering. I stuttered very badly through my 20s and beyond. And I stuttered so badly that I couldn't even say my name. I could never say Gurian. Most stutterers have a very hard time saying their name. And my feeling is because your name is your identity. And if you're not happy with who you are, then it's very hard to put yourself out to the rest of the world. And so I had to work on myself very hard. Even after I became a doctor, I still was blocking on certain words. And I realized one day that I didn't stutter when I was alone. I only stuttered when I was trying to talk to somebody else, which I consider it grace. I figured out that you can't have a disability based on your location, right? If a man has a limp, he limps in every room of his house. He can't go into a room alone and walk perfectly. But
now, is this the current book? Does that involve some of your experiences and tying it back to your stuttering? Because this, it's the happiness series, and I know that you have a 7th book out as well, and that book is not too far from where from the first one. But how does it differ? It's fight the fear, overcoming the overcoming obstacles that stand in your way. That's the one you're talking about.
Well, the original book, Healing Your Heart, had a lot to do with how I cured myself by changing my thought. It's very important for people to know that they can change the way they think. Fight the Fear was written after I recovered from COVID double pneumonia.
Let's talk about that.
Okay. I was sick for a good 2 months. I got it when it first came out in March of 2020, because I like to be the first at everything. So I didn't want to wait. I went right out and caught it. And I wound up with COVID double pneumonia, and I was in the hospital. I tried not to go to the hospital. I waited 2 weeks, and I was getting sicker and sicker. And when I came out of the hospital, it was, to say the least, it was a very traumatic event. It was at the time when New York was the epicenter of the virus, and they were running out of rooms already. They were putting people in the hallway. And, they kept me in isolation for 2 days. And on the 3rd day, they moved me into a room with 3 other very sick men, all with the virus. And I was hoping they were kidding me when they told me that the man in the bed next to me was from Wuhan, China. And I'm like, that can't even happen. My life is a Woody Allen movie. And it did.
And the book was born out of that. Now I want to, we only have 5 minutes left.
Oh, I didn't realize. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't realize we were doing 15. So yeah, I'll make it very quick. The book was born out of that because in order to stay healthy, I had to keep my thoughts very positive. I had to stay in a positive frame of mind. And I wrote this book about fighting the fear because we're all engulfed in fear. For the last year, we've all been, surrounded by fear. It's involved in everything that we do. And fear is a bully, and it doesn't want you to accomplish anything. So I wrote about how I conquered a heart attack. I had a widowmaker heart attack. And 5 days later, I was back on stage doing comedy. And the owner of the club said, "What, are you crazy? You just had a heart attack." And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's hard to get a spot here. I didn't want to lose my spot." And so I've had to fight fear my whole life, and I'm not sure why. But I was never taught that the world was a safe place. And
you know what? I've known you for at least a decade, and every time I see you, you're always full of positive energy with tons of friends around, and you don't seem like you're fearing anything, my friend. You are in the spotlight. I've never heard you stutter. I've only heard good things about you. I think you are hilarious. I mean, I've seen some of your shows. Tell us about your Housewives involvement. I know that you filmed several episodes of The Real Housewives of New York, and you created a sketch for Countess Luan and Princess Carol. Tell us about that.
Right, that was so fun. Well, look, I've been friends with Luan since she was a nurse. I know her for so many, many years. And we were dear friends. And she came to me one day and she said, we want to do some comedy, because she's so multi-talented. You know, she sings and acts and does everything. But she wanted to do comedy. So I said, well, stand-up comedy is not within the realm, but you should do a sketch. And she said, create a sketch for us. We want to make fun of our royalty. So I created a sketch for her and Countess Luan and Princess Carol, saying that they got their titles on the internet, you know, and I wrote this whole sketch. It was very funny. Bravo TV loved it. They sent a crew to my house. We filmed here for days. And then I called my friend who owned the Pit, and I said, we want to do a presentation at the Pit. And he gave us the theater, and it was a packed show, and all the housewives came, and I got to do a lot of events with them. But one thing happened, which was interesting. I made sure that there was no stress on the set, because I rehearsed with them before, and we did it as a video, because I didn't want the other housewives to make fun of them, you know, because that's very easy to do. Anybody can make fun of somebody when they're doing comedy. So I made sure that everything went perfectly.
Look at you controlling everything and thinking steps ahead to make sure that people's feelings are catered to, and that's what makes you an empath. So if you can go back to your involvement with the Housewives, and you can pick one housewife, who would you be?
If I could pick one housewife, who
yeah, if you could be one of the housewives, who would you be?
I'd pick Luann, of course. Luann's amazing to me. You know, I watched her fulfill her dream. And I watched her, you know, I knew her way before she was famous. And I watched her work so hard. And I always admire people. You know, I've come to know a lot of people, so-called stars. And I always admire people who are successful at what they do, because it's so hard to do that. You know, I've watched you climb, you know, I mean, you've accomplished amazing things, and it's so wonderful that you have this show. And I love Polyxenia. I have to tell you that. To me, it's such a beautiful name that I would call you that if I was with you. But Xen is great. I just love watching people accomplish their dreams, because in order to do that, you have to fight the fear.
You are so right. Now, if you can give anybody who wants to pursue a career in comedy a piece of advice really quickly, we have about a minute and a half left. What's the best advice you can give to a rising comedian?
Never let anybody tell you that you're not funny. You know, you have to persevere. Comedy is very subjective. What's hilarious to one person, another person is just humming. But if they want to see great comedy, they can come to my show. I have a big show coming up at the Cutting Room, a beautiful space on East 32nd Street on August 17th, Tuesday, August 17th at 8 p.m. with a killer lineup. You know, Derek Gaines, who's up for an Emmy, Mark Normand, who opens for Amy Schumer and has been on Fallon a million times, and Chuck Nice, the host of Brain Games on Nat Geo, and Vlad Camanyo, who had his own show on TV. I have an amazing lineup. So if you want to see real comedy and guaranteed laughs, I'm producing and I'm hosting. So it's
so it's going to be at the Cutting Room, August 17th.
Tuesday, August 17th at 8 p.m. Doors open at 7. Come for dinner. Come and introduce yourself to me. Hang out.
Great. You heard it right here first on 710 WR, the voice of New York. That was comedian Jeffrey Gurian. You guys could definitely check him out on comedymatterstv.com, or you can also check out a really cool website, stopstutteringNowGurian.com. He is awesome. He is one of a kind. Check him out. I'm Xen Sams. I'll be right back after this with another incredible guest.
Thank you, Xen.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City, Tempest, a Burkhan World Project, Vice Cucina in Midtown and Soho, Revere Securities, Helen Yarmack International, and Romulus Entertainment. Tune in every Saturday night at 9 p.m. on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, or download the iHeart app. Text the word collaborations to 917-575-2321. Follow Xen on social media @ZenSams. That's Zen with an X.
Welcome back, beautiful people. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I am your host, Zen Sams. Now, welcoming to the show in just a few, we have producer of Entourage and Ballers, Rob Weiss, who teamed up with Shawn and O'Neill McKnight and launched the Cray on PodcastOne this past June. Now, the Cray is sponsored by Mercari, and their premiere episode featured Adam Carolla, Perez Hilton, and Robert Horry. And it's a rare feat when a podcast launches with a title sponsor. Take it from me, I've got about half a dozen. And then they take it one step further and incorporate a branded in-show segment. It's a dream scenario for a podcasting platform, and it exhibits the endless possibilities that exist for brands and hosts in the podcasting world. And that's something that I've been advocating for a while. Now, the Cray addresses today's biggest issues in hopes of enlightening listeners and helping them grow. And of course, it's all about growing. No one can deny that in these wild times, the world has gone more than just a little bit crazy. And I think it's a very fitting title. And I think they aim to explore the effect of these times on our mind, body, and soul. And now Rob Weiss is a friend, and he's a native New Yorker, very fitting to be on the Voice of New York right now. He studied film and fashion in New York City at Parsons School of Design. He wrote and directed the 1993 cult classic Amongst Friends, which premiered at the Sundance Film Festival. I don't
want to cut you off, but we don't really give out the years because it dates me, you know what I mean? But that's okay. Continue.
Okay. Okay,
I'm only teasing. I'm only joking.
We could cut that out. We could totally cut that.
I'm only teasing you.
You're so hilarious. And you know, the HBO series, including Entourage, is really where I wanted to take the viewers. And had to make it in America. And Ballers was starring Dwayne Johnson.
It's a New York show.
Yeah, this is a New York show, but they do know it over there. And the massive pop culture success of Entourage earned you how many? 6 Golden Globes for Best Television Series?
Nominations, no wins.
3 Primetime Emmy Award nominations for what was it? Yeah. Best Comedy, right?
Best Comedy, that's right.
Well, you know what? Welcome to the show. You welcomed yourself. So great to have you on.
I have to just jump in. If I don't jump in, I just like kind of spiral waiting to talk. You know, I get all that like.
I love the urgency.
And you have just such an energy. I'm like, just like, wow. I remember when I was that like fast and sharp and lived back east. So it's kind of refreshing, especially at 9:30 in the morning, my time.
Yeah, well, good morning.
I'm not quite there yet, but hopefully my energy will pick up throughout the day. So.
You just need that shot of coffee. I love coffee.
I got it. I took it at 6:30, but I think I'm ready for the next. You know?
Yeah, coffee throughout the day. Now, everything, Rob, that you have ever put your mind to, you've accomplished, and some say that you kind of worked backwards, you know, from Entourage and Ballers to focusing on the podcast, to so to speak. Now, tell us what inspired this podcast specifically, and how you tie it into giving back.
I think, like, you know, well, I mean, they're separate points, but you know, for several years last few years leading into the pandemic, when podcasts were really popping, I had a few friends who were kind of involved in that field. Who were like, you should do a pod. We should do a pod with our friends, and we're all fucking nuts, and we should do this pod. And we kind of explored one avenue, and I didn't really like it. I felt like it was light on concept. And then a friend of mine, Shawn, had introduced me to Norm Pettis, who owned and started PodcastOne. And I went to lunch with him, and he's like, you guys are fucking crazy. You should do a show called The Crazies. And we started thinking, we're like, you know, and this is in the middle of the pandemic. And I'm like, whoa, the whole world's kind of crazy right now. I mean, I've said it on my show. I think that, like, literally, I feel like I'm walking around, zombies are coming at me half the time. Because people are acting so uncharacteristically like they were before they were 2 years ago. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, we're in insane times. But tell the audience, because the Cray, you ask your interviewees to bring a memento from their personal collection that will go up for sale in the Cray store on Mercari.
Right.
And then
so basically, we tried a bunch of different ways, just to answer the first thing. We tried a bunch of different ways. Met Norm. He was like, you guys should do it. We built out the Cray. It was supposed to be more of kind of like gurus coming in and helping people, but it just became more about like crazy conversations with really cool, inspirational people. But we have some amazing stuff lined up. Macari came in as our title sponsor via an introduction from a former partner of ours. And the way we tried to develop this relationship is Macari is an online marketplace, and they're actually launching Macari Local now, which is really kind of interesting. And we'll get onto that in my show. But, you know, we wanted to build out this store for people to actually try Macari, sell products on. So we built a Cray shop, and our store benefits Children's Hospital LA. So, for example, JB Smoove is on his episode of Lair in a couple of weeks. I think he's actually selling some kind of wardrobe / memorabilia from Curb that will go listed on the shop, and people can buy it, and it'll benefit the
And then the
Children's
funds raised from the sale of that item goes directly to benefit the Children's
Yes.
Hospital. That's
Yes.
amazing. So
Like
you're
I'm donating a signed by the cast Entourage poster. They got, you know, I mean, I don't even know why I have it. I think I got it in case I got an office and I wanted to hang it up. But
so
kinda
you
over.
have already gotten a few items in. What's
Yeah,
like
like
the
Ashley
weirdest?
Benson.
What's the weirdest item or the coolest thing you've gotten?
I don't know that we've really dug deep enough yet. We're still really early into the podcast. We've only, I think, dropped 5 episodes, the 6th dropping this week. So most of the stuff's kind of been like on the first episode with the podcasters, they all donated books. Ashley Benson is donating Privé Revaux sunglasses, a company she's partners with Jamie Foxx in. Charlotte McKinney was going to do like a signed Carl's Jr. hat because that commercial is what made her famous. So it's kind of like cool, interesting things.
Cool, interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Cool, interesting. And the Cray is available on PodcastOne, Amazon, Apple,
Across all
Spotify, and all the
platforms.
platforms.
Same thing as all the other 950,000 podcasts that
Exactly.
are in existence. It was really important that I jump into the podcast game at this time in my life because, you know, we're so light on pods to choose from.
You are 100% right. It's booming. Okay. Do you have a dream guest?
A dream guest. I think, like, you know, the real macro goal for me with it in terms of guests is the combination of guests, right? Like, I'll speak to interesting people and go, oh, I want to have a conversation with these guys about that. But sometimes, and I just don't want to say who it is because I'm in the middle of trying to do one right now. It's a little tricky to get people together. Like when people like putting Charlotte McKinney and Cedric the Entertainer together at the table was awesome.
That was awesome. I saw that
DJ
one.
Cassidy and JB Smoove like together in the conversation is great. They have an organic relationship along with O'Neill McKnight, our co-host.
All right.
And it was just I never.
It's pairing the right people. Okay,
yes,
so we have 3 minutes left. I want to do some Hollywood trivia with you. Are you ready?
For sure.
Okay, let's see how well you know Vance and the gang. Okay, what was the name of the movie that Vincent shot in Bogota?
In Bogota. Medellin.
Medellin, right. And according to Turtle, who sent back 300,000 pictures because it made his package look too small in sweatpants.
Oh, that's fucking hysterical. I know it is too. I know it's you know, you don't want to you don't want to get this wrong. And I'm not calling out somebody.
Warren Beatty.
Warren Beatty.
Yeah, Warren Beatty.
That's right.
Okay, what is the name of the dog that Vince purchases in season 1?
Oh, it's I mean, everybody would always hit me up because I had Rottweilers, and everybody would always be, is that Arnold?
Exactly,
Right.
Arnold. What is the name of the childhood friend and ex-con who comes to live with Vince?
I wrote all those. Dom.
Oh, you did? Okay, well, there you go. Well, the boys are back in town.
Yeah, I didn't really produce Entourage. I was a writer, exec producer on Entourage.
Oh, right, yeah. But you wrote a lot of. Okay, so the boys are back in town. What comic book is Ari trying to get Vince to star in?
Aquaman.
What's the nickname of Johnny Chase?
Drama.
There you go. Well, it's obvious to you. You know, some of our 710 WR listeners are not up to date, but now they will be. You guys definitely have to check out Rob Weiss. Check out his podcast, The Cray. It's available on everywhere you get your usual podcasts, specifically PodcastOne. And the vodcast will be seen on LiveX Live. And Rob, thank you so much for coming on, man. It was awesome having you on. Yeah,
this
you
whole
have.
thing?
Yeah, you have a minute left now. That's it. That's it. What's your exit? Come on, tell the world. What's the
Damn, what
next
do I
big thing you're
got?
working on? What's the next big thing you're working on? You
You
have a
know
minute
what?
left.
That's more than a minute conversation because I'm trying to figure it out. I'm actually going to call your husband and talk to him about it because I got to come up with some big plans. But it's you know, it's literally a very interesting yet subtly crazy time in this business.
Everything is coming alive. This is the time. And I know you are a hot commodity in Hollywood. And I know that everybody knows who you are. And you are not only talented, but you are gifted. You'd like to give back. And I thank you for coming on the show. The Cray is definitely something you guys should check out. You're listening to A Moment of Zen. I am your host, Zen Sams, right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. That was Rob Weiss. We will be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City, Tempest, a Burkhan World Project, BJ Cucina in Midtown and Soho, Revere Securities, Helen Yarmack International, and Romulus Entertainment. Tune in every Saturday night at 9 p.m. on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, or download the iHeart app. Text the word collaborations to 917-575-2321. Follow Zen on social media @ZenSams. That's Zen with an X.
Hello everyone, this is Kyle Wool, President of Revere Securities Wealth Management for A Moment of Zen in our weekly business bump. So the main topics we're talking about right now is the Federal Reserve Bank and what's going to happen with interest rates. Now with the Delta variants of the COVID-19 virus, it looks like they may pause their planned tapering. At the moment, we're still tapering. We're buying $80 billion of U.S. Treasuries a month and $40 billion of U.S. mortgages. Now, Chairman Powell's come out and he said he will not raise interest rates until we bring the tapering to zero. So that'll be an interesting thing for all of us to watch over the days, weeks, and months to come. The second big thing I think we should focus on this week is the dominance, the absolute dominance of U.S. large cap tech. You're looking at companies like Apple that just blew away their biggest quarterly and first half of the year earnings in history in the 47 years of Apple, all-time record high. But with that said, Apple did warn that they are very nervous with the Delta variants in countries like Taiwan and South Korea, which could interrupt the microchips that they need and the semiconductors. And if you've been listening to Zen and the Moment of Zen over the last few months, this is something that Kyle Wool, President of Revere Securities, has been warning us about. The next thing I would say is you have to also, again, look at large cap tech. If you look at Google and Facebook, they are smashing earnings. Most of the revenue growth is coming from online advertising. Facebook seems to have a lot of issues in the news, but the advertisers are still spending money on Facebook and the related companies of Instagram and WhatsApp. And the same with Google. Google continues to grow year over year, quarter over quarter, month over month in online revenue. Now, it'll be interesting with the Democrat-controlled Congress and their talks of breaking up big tech, if they'll really start to focus on this as antitrust, as they kind of hinted to. I think not, but we'll see. And I think another large cap tech company that we have to focus on is Microsoft. Microsoft really is the embodiment of the old book that was written about IBM, Who Says Elephants Can't Dance? Microsoft has gone out there and danced on everyone in the cloud computing market. Microsoft is not only increasing the market share, they're rivaling Amazon across the board for cloud computing. So in summary, the main items that we're looking at right now, the Federal Reserve Bank, will they taper and will they raise interest rates anytime soon? We'll see. The dominance of companies like Apple, the dominance of Google, Facebook, and Microsoft, but also some concerns, once again, coming out of Southeast Asia and East Asia. Will there be a disruption in the microchips and semiconductors that all these companies need to survive? So, once again, Kyle Wool, President of Wealth Management at Revere Securities, and I'll throw it back to Zen. Thank you.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City, Tempest, a Burkhan World Project, BJ Cucina in Midtown and Soho, Revere Securities, Helen Yarmack International, and Romulus Entertainment. Tune in every Saturday night at 9 p.m. on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, or download the iHeart app. Text the word collaborations to 917-575-2321. Follow Xen on social media @ZenSams. That's Zen with an X.
Well, that's a wrap, my friends. Thank you for being loyal listeners. Please text me for collaborations at 917-575-2321. Remember to join me right here on 710 WR, the voice of New York, every Saturday night from 9 to 10 p.m. or go to 710wr.iheart.com/A Moment of Zen to watch fully uploaded episodes. Please tune back in next Saturday night. I have an amazing lineup. Remember, happiness is the only thing that multiplies when you share it. I will see you soon.